Hi there, and welcome into Real Conversations, a film podcast that seeks to explore the history of the Reel-to-Reel International Film Festival presented by the Cleveland County Arts Council. My name is Thomas Manning, and this year Reel-to-Reel is celebrating 25 years. I'm joined today by Ryan Stephen Green, director of the documentary It's For You, Ephemeral Art and the Death of the Public Phone, an official selection of Reel-to-Reel 2024. So Ryan, thanks so much for taking the time today.
Hey, I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Thomas.
Absolutely. And we're looking forward to having you at the festival here. Now, just a week and a half away. I know you're going to be coming out from LA. You got some family in North Carolina. Real looking forward to meeting you. And before we dive into talking about your documentary specifically, I'd love to have you share a bit about your background and passion for the art of filmmaking. I know that goes back quite a ways for you to your childhood. So, when did that ignite and what paved the way for where you are now?
It's a great question. And yeah, thanks definitely for the festival, for one. So glad that it just worked out, like the aligning of the stars, going, family vacation, going to stay with family and reel to reel festival at the same time. So like really, really excited that that's all coming together in that way. And then, yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast as well. The the origin story. I've asked myself that question over the years, and there wasn't really a moment for me. And that, like I didn't have a camera as a kid. So I'm 43. So like learning photography, say in high school, photography and film were the same thing, as in like, the substance of film, 35 millimeter film. And it was very difficult to get hold of video cameras for me at the time because they were expensive and not every family had them kind of thing. And so nevertheless, like I guess the first sort of video projects I ever worked on was, and you saw it in the documentary, It's For You. We had a rollerblading crew, and we would scrape together whatever cameras we could, and we would record our adventures and then edit together kind of a summer highlights video type thing. Um, that was my first taste, and that led kind of directly into taking like video production classes in high school. Um, Again, like at the time, there were exactly two video production classes at Arcadia High School. And it was beginning video production and advanced video production. And in advanced video production, you got to work on the school news, Apache News, which was, as I recall, I think it was a daily like news broadcast, very short, but I went to all the classrooms. And that was sort of prescient for my career in a way, because that was my first paying gig. Actually, we got a sponsor in a local camera shop that paid not me but the program $500 to make a commercial for the camera shop. It was called Multicam on on Santa Anita. And I was a sophomore, and me and a senior teamed up to direct this commercial or whatever for Multicam that then aired on Apache News. And anymore, I make all my money pretty much in commercials, and that's where that started. That's the very, very first, commercial I ever made for sure. Um, Kept making films throughout high school, went into college. I went to USC, go Trojans. I went in as a baseball player and as a civil engineering major. And so that was the other sort of left brain, right brain thing in my life, was like super good at math, super, advanced. Um, Civil engineering, I took drafting classes and art classes and stuff throughout school. That's where that was coming from. Obviously got into USC, but freshman year was very tumultuous, very difficult. Even though I'm local here in LA, didn't know if I would last the year. My dad kind of encouraged me and just was like, we've already paid for the school year, just see it through. And if you want to, not go back for sophomore year, we can talk about what would be next. But so I was like, I quit the baseball team. I dropped civil engineering as a major. I broke up with my girlfriend, my high school sweetheart, basically. All, not to mention living outside of the home for the first time. So very tumultuous. Sophomore year, decided to get back up on the horse as undeclared and applied to the film school, got in. So if there was ever a watershed moment in my sort of origin story, that's probably it right there. Was like USC Film School, very competitive even back then. And that sort of set the path. Now I was still doing photography. And so photography and filmmaking sort of grew up together for me. And whereas I started suffering some setbacks on the photography end of things and started taking my foot off the accelerator there, on the filmmaking end of things, I kept experiencing those little successes, I guess you would say, kind of encourage you to keep on going. Um, Jobs, films, film festivals, award, everything, followed that. And it's kind of been, there have been moments therein, but that's kind of how it started. It was the seeds like scattered. They started to take hold, they started to grow. And here I am, basically like 25 years now into more, more than that into my filmmaking thing and still doing it, still love it. I can't imagine a time in my life at this point where I would not have a next documentary I would be looking forward to making.
Your Instagram page at Payphones of Los Angeles. I know you started that back in 2018, I believe, and it's something that's blossomed and bloomed and I mean grown into what we have now with the documentary we're going to
Totally
be showing.
unexpectedly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I was that's kind of what I was going to ask. I That wasn't something that you expected, it sounds like. Can you take me back to the beginning of creating that page and just what what your initial objective was with that? Where did you think it was going to go? Obviously, like you said, you didn't expect it to end up where we are right now.
Yeah, great question. And I mean, to answer the second part first, I had zero expectation. I didn't think it would go anywhere. Um, when you're so I only make documentaries. I make on the professional side, I make commercials. Anymore, pretty much only edit. I used to direct and edit, and I just kind of like, I don't like the risk, I don't like the hustle, like just keep it simple. So pretty much I just edit these days on the commercial side. Um, you always have your ear to the ground when you're a documentary filmmaker because you can't summon it from nowhere. It has to come from the real world. And so I'm always listening and I'm always asking questions and things like that. The payphones thing, it was not something obviously I was open to a new project. So this is following my last feature film from 2016, which is called The Hollywood Shorties, very successful. Um, and we could go into that later if you want to, or we could leave it lie. We'll stick to payphones here. The payphones thing, we have to start with saying like I was a full-time parent. So I have three young children now. And when I finished my last feature film, I was sort of racing the clock to try to finish it before my first child came. Didn't happen. My daughter Margaret was born, and I had to just keep on pounding to get that film done. Let's see, she was born in 2015, and the film premiered at South by in was that March of 2016. She wasn't quite a year old at that time. And then all of 2017, I mean, every single month, a couple times a month, was traveling and at film festivals that whole year. It was a crazy, crazy ride. I knew I couldn't do another feature because I was primary for her. And so I started looking for creative projects I could do that weren't so time consuming, didn't require such a commitment. And like that's where film photography came back for me in a major way. Like during the pandemic, built a dark room, which was a 20-year goal of mine. And so I was looking for like you can when the kids are asleep, you can go into the dark room and spend 2 hours and you get a print out of it. And it's like little bite-size ways that you can still have creative success without the years it takes to finish a feature doc, right? I knew I didn't have that in me. Well, as photography was coming back up for me, sort of, I don't know, coincidentally, or I don't know if this is a thing of, me aging or something, but like I started noticing that payphones I had used as a kid were gone. Just the things you start notice when you can measure your life in decades and how things change. And sort of it's like a mortality moment or something like that. It's like there's no going back. It's sweet and it's painful all at the same time. And the payphones are just a small sort of symbol, I guess, of that. I immediately started photographing. That was really it. And I didn't question it. I had no expectation. I wasn't even on Instagram at the time. I just started with my smartphone documenting those sites because you can even see like rusty bolts in the ground usually where they were. And that was all it was. Well, the thing is, like, when you start doing something like photographing payphones, it's like slug bug. You can't stop seeing them everywhere, bubble red, bubble blue, like, bubble yellow, whatever, payphone, 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 payphone. And so I'd be photographing all of them. And that turned to rerouting, Google Maps to go through areas and streets that I wasn't familiar with, and, hoping on striking upon like troves. And they're out there. I mean, they're still very widespread in LA. And so I just kept accumulating payphones. And like not even a year went by, and I was showing somebody this sort of like album that I had made on my smartphone. Like, look at all this. And from the start, I was photographing them in the same way because I'm a filmmaker. I was thinking it's like a time lapse. Look, they're disintegrating. And so I was photographing them as if it was like a Ron Fricke, Baraka type, like epic style time lapse of a disintegrating payphone over decades. And that actually worked. I'll send you the video link. I actually made a time lapse of a disintegrating payphone. I organized like 1,000 photos, boiled it down to like 200 plus to the same style payphones, like the actual like animation worked with the same shape. And another story again, but I made a flip book out of out of that animation of a disintegrating payphone too. So this was all happening, and I literally had no plan. I was showing this person, my gallery, and realized I had like 300 photos in this gallery of individual payphones. And I was like, yeah, maybe someday it'll be a coffee table book or something like that. And I'm pretty sure that's where the idea came up. Oh, why don't you just post them to Instagram? Like it's somewhere to put them, and that way you don't have to pull out your phone every time. Like people could just see like your page. No thought, no anything. I did not connect it to my defunct Facebook page. I didn't tell my friends about it. I just launched the page and I named it right then, Payphones of Los Angeles. It's always been the same name. It just started growing on its own. Press, like just things happened following that. And it wasn't all just unintentional. I mean, I did try to, I saw that there were other payphones pages out there and would handle it in different ways, typically in like ways to try to make cool photography, just focusing on the payphone. And either I wasn't as confident in my photography in 2018, or I just leaned into the filmmaking thing, or whatever it was. I just decided I'm not trying to look cool here. I'm just trying to create an archive. And of course, photographing in the same way each time, just very frontal, descriptive. Here's what it is. And then I would provide the address as well. That was sort of the first thing that started to differentiate my page from the other payphones pages that were out there. And then the next thing was, well, what if I could bring some of my filmmaking chops to bear in a very real way? At the time, you could only upload 1 minute um, video clips to Instagram. I was like, well, that's a pretty cool like creative limitation. And I'm used to 1 minute because I work in advertising already. And so I was like, what if I could make some like just micro documentaries, like really quick stories about individual payphones? And so I kind of made a list of like payphones I had seen or encountered or people I had met that might make interesting topics. And I just kind of started reaching out and asking questions that way. I ended up doing 10, finishing 10 microdocs. And the last one is like 3 minutes. So it's a three-parter, 3 minute microdoc. And I'd shot a bunch more. I just never got around to editing them because it was like, okay, I'm only spending a few days or a week or something, on each one of these things. But even that is too much because literally nobody is seeing them. Nobody cares. I'm just like making documentaries to the void. And I was like, okay, interesting. So linear documentaries are not really suited to Instagram. But that was a major moment for what would become It's For You, specifically because one of the microdocs is on an LA street artist named Screwy Blooms. I'd encountered his work, just because I have my finger on the pulse of phones out there. And you see this phone, it's nothing but a pedestal. You see this phone, it's nothing but bolts in the ground. You see this phone, it's still working. You see this phone, and it's a piece of plywood with a painted payphone on it. You pull over, you examine the thing, and obviously it was a payphone. There's a pedestal there. It's still anchored into the ground, but the phone and the enclosure are gone, and somebody has put a piece of plywood on it and painted a payphone on it. Well, that's interesting. Never seen that one. You snap. That became one of the microdocs. And it was Screwy Blooms, my friend Juan Camacho, who made that piece of art. Come to find out, he had done at that point, which was also 2018, I believe. At that point, he had already done like 70 installs around LA. And that's a ridiculous amount. You know, he's going out and making these things, finding trash, reconfiguring, painting them, installing them into payphones just because they get torn out, they get defaced, they get graffiti, they get, burnt. He was just doing it for the love. And so we made a micro doc, and it just, even now, I've made probably upwards of 40 documentaries of various sizes. Even now, that 1 minute documentary on Screwy Blooms is probably in my top five favorite documentaries I've made. It's just like a punch in the face. It moves so quick. It's exactly what it needs to be, not a frame more. And I mean, I would debt a gratitude to Instagram for that, because I wouldn't have made a 1 minute documentary were it not for that runtime limit kind of thing.
With artists like Screwy Blooms, I assume he's very eager to be a part of a documentary and to have his work be displayed in a medium like this. But are there other street artists out there that are a bit more cautious when you approach them? Or is that something that you run into?
Dude,
Yeah.
Thomas, you ask great questions. This isn't your first rodeo, is it?
It's not. No, it's not. I try to come at you with something that get you thinking, gets the gears going. So
For sure. You did your homework. Like the the answer to your question is street artists are all totally different. They have different priorities, different personalities, different generations. Some of them are working, some of them are not, some of them are professionals and, need to remain anonymous in the film, say. So yeah, a range of responses. Got some no's. So there are people I reached out to that are not in the film. I think all told, I reached out to 10 different LA street artists, maybe 11, 10 or 11 in there. There are seven in the film. And I included everybody that I went out and photographed. So definitely got some no's. And there's various reasons there. I'm not privy to all the reasons why I got no's. I was more surprised that I got so many yeses. Some street artists are harder to find than others. Some don't include a hashtag or a name of any sort. Notably, like Nikki Nailed It, super prominent street artist. I've been out with Nikki Nailed It on a number of occasions now, including a couple occasions that are included in the film. Every single time I've gone out, people stop and know who this street artist is. Like, he's straight up famous in that community. Everybody knows the kid face. And so varying degrees of that sort of thing, like notoriety. And yeah, I was getting introduced to all of that. Now, I'm not a street artist, I'm not a graffiti artist. I can't, my constitution won't really permit me to dabble. And I know that about myself. And to be quite honest, and the artists in the film know this, like, I hate graffiti. It just irks me to no end. At the same time, I don't want to be, like a middle-aged guy getting into, my later years, just like driving around LA, just like angry. Why are these little stupid teenagers like, just crusty old man, just like complaining about everything. I refuse to be that guy. And so when I find something inside of me, like I hate graffiti and I feel that compulsion to just like rail, I lean into it and like start asking questions. And oh, another precursor to this film was I did a very short documentary during the pandemic, like height of the pandemic. It's 3 minutes long. It's called Wear Your Masks. And it's a 3 minute documentary on a graffiti writer here in LA. And it was me just leaning into my distaste for graffiti and asking questions. What is this about? Who is behind this? And just letting them instruct me, teach me. I still hate graffiti, but I understand it to a greater extent, and I realize it's not as simple as stupid ass teenagers, throwing spray paint on the wall. It's an entire world, an entire range of stories and backgrounds and motivations, and so I've come to appreciate it in a way that I certainly didn't have before making It's For You. And yeah, that was just on account of like starting to reach out to those street artists and ask the questions. I think what got the yeses, that's what I was going to say, Thomas, is like what got me the yeses was the fact that I reached out via DM on Instagram as Payphones of Los Angeles. And because I already had a bit of a following and I had actually had some interactions with some of them already, that is what sort of broke down any need to explain myself. It was already, that part was already answered. Oh, it's Payphones of Los Angeles. Cool. What does he have to say? Whoa, he's doing a project. Yeah. That was like a real key to getting that access.
And I think there is a great irony in the fact that you use social media to highlight and pay tribute to this, dying species of the public phone. Is that something that you've thought about a lot? Is that something that informs a lot of the work you do?
It's something that I would hope somebody like you would notice. Thank you. I mean, more so when I was photographing, I would say. Like I'm documenting a dead technology with the technology that killed it. Yeah, that was very delicious to me. I've never highlighted it because there's nothing more to say than that. It's just a fact, you know. It's the march of technology. It's a delicious irony for sure, and I do like that. The social media aspect, I'm just so surprised. Like I'm not an adept Instagram user. I'm not on any other platform. I still have an account on Facebook that I don't even touch. So yeah, that's just a weird, like I placed that whole social media experience with Payphones of Los Angeles just into the box of like that was another documentary that I made that wasn't a linear documentary. It was a, new media documentary, or, put whatever label you want on it. And that's kind of where I put that aspect.
And I know you've been approached by a lot of people across different professions who have found your Instagram page, whether they're filmmakers, journalists, photographers, doing location scouting. Do you have any favorite memories or stories from one of those instances that you'd like to share?
Oh, the best one, yeah. Like oh God. So you get all kinds of messages, and some of them are interesting, some of them are not. I'll make this one really brief, but like somebody says, I'm an editor for this magazine. We're looking for a location around this area. And I was like, oh, interesting. I looked up the magazine. It's like, oh, this is like a legit LA magazine. Okay. And so I took the time to like, okay, look at my photos. Like I'm familiar with the area. And so I gave them like five or six, viable options for them as like a location for this photo shoot. So appreciative. Oh my God, thank you so much. Like we're doing this whole I think that's all they did was like thank you. Weeks pass or something. And he's like, this issue that we're doing is called Phone a Friend. It's all like telephone themed. We'd love to do a feature on your Instagram page. I was like, sure, dude, that'd be awesome. Let me know what I can do. Thinking, like this is LA, like this is never gonna come through, whatever. Another message comes from a different person later on, and now an email. I was like, oh wow, so they're like still thinking about this. Could you send us a gallery of like selects kind of thing? I send them a gallery. I said, hey, I've also been photographing on like medium format film, and we could send you a gallery of that too. So like it feels like they're getting more serious, but I still don't know. Eventually the issue comes out and they send me a copy. That might be how I found out actually. They mailed me a copy, and it's like a legit magazine. It's called Flaunt Magazine. It's like high fashion, like pop culture. It's like really fancy, like Gucci and Versace ads, like full bleed, beautiful, like print, huge magazine, super thick. And lo and behold, like right in the mix, there's this feature on Payphones of Los Angeles, like beautifully printed. They called it downed lines. It has like quotes from Jean Baudrillard, this like French philosopher, that like runs throughout these images of my page. It's just like an unbelievable feature. I don't know that I got any follows from it whatsoever. I don't know what the circulation of Flaunt magazine is, but it's just like such a beautiful work of art. I was just beside myself. I messaged, hey, could I get a second copy of the thing so I can actually frame like all the full bleed, print? Because just the prints alone are amazing, like really high quality, beautiful. And so I framed like the cover of the magazine and then all the prints of my work from that. So that was like, dude, Payphones of Los Angeles has come up in the world after that one. That was crazy.
And I know you've also said that everyone has a payphone story. So what is that story for you? Is there a specific situation that is just, fully ingrained in your memory based on your experience with the payphone?
Lots of stories from like the post Payphones of Los Angeles phase, like 2018 on. But pre 2018, I guess the most personal story is it. My uncle, Larry, was a little person, a dwarf. My uncle Larry was one of the catalysts for making my last feature documentary, which was called The Hollywood Shorties, the world's smallest professional basketball team. My uncle Larry was a Hollywood shorty. So I grew up around that story, which again, that was the access. That's how I was able to make that story. My uncle Larry is deceased, I think late 2004. And the last place I ever saw him living was standing at a payphone right here in my neighborhood. I mean, half a mile, maybe less, third of a mile from my house. My dad and I were driving, um, past, and I said, "Hey, it's Uncle Larry." I mean, you can't mistake him. He's a little person talking on a payphone. We pull over, and he hops in with us. We give him a ride to wherever he was going. And besides like that being the last place I ever saw him alive, like that phone is no longer there. And that was one of the ones early on, in 2018. It wasn't the first one I photographed. It was kind of a memory that came back to me as I began to photograph that, wait, there was a payphone over here. Where was that? And sort of just kind of scouring the sidewalk and like checking my own memory of that event. I know there was a payphone. The sidewalk hasn't been replaced, so it was somewhere here. And then rediscovering those the rusty bolts. There it was. And then the other thing you can do is like you can go back on Google Street Maps or Google Maps like Street View. You can go back in time and view previous years when their vehicle passed and photographed that spot. And so I went to that spot on Google Street View and went all the way back as far as I could. And the oldest photo I believe was 2007. And there's the payphone, standing right there. And it's just eerie and it's chilling. And it's just one of those things where it's like, again, that like it touches your mortality, it touches that memory and stuff like that. And even now, like talking about it, I haven't talked about it a lot really at all. I haven't written about it, and so I don't know all what to say about it. I don't know all my emotions. I just know like even now getting kind of affected, you know, to bring it up. So yeah.
Well, Ryan, it's really been a privilege to share a conversation with you today, and we could probably talk for another couple hours about your film and about all the work you do. And we're really excited to see you at Reel to Reel coming up, and it's gonna be great to have your film shown to our audience, and I know they're all looking forward to that. Well, thanks so much, Ryan, and yeah, we'll stay in touch, and we will see you soon.
Thank you very much, Thomas. It's been a pleasure.